The storm shutters of Outpost Hellion 3 were never meant to hold back artillery fire, but they did a decent job of keeping the dust out. Sergeant Adrian Vale stood next to the trembling metal, listening as distant impacts vibrated through the walls like a heartbeat he couldn't calm. It was supposed to be a routine survey mission. 1 week of geological scans, a boring report, and then stake night back on the station. Instead, the planet was under siege, the evacuation ships were gone, and he was alone. Or so he thought, until he heard something soft behind the collapsed storage racks. A sound that didn't belong to artillery or shifting metal. Something like a breath held too long, then released in pain. Adrian tightened his grip on his rifle. "Hello, if you're a scavenger, I'm really not in the mood." The beam of his flashlight landed on a figure curled against the wall. A woman, not human. Her skin shimmered faintly, like moonlight diffused through water, and her long, curved ears twitched weakly at the sound of his voice. She wore torn ceremonial armor, elegant even in ruin, and the glowing tracing along her collarbone pulsed irregularly as if each heartbeat cost her something. Adrian knelt instinctively. Hey, stay with me. I'm not here to hurt you." Her eyes opened, silver, luminous, and ancient in a way that made him forget every coherent thought. She studied him with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Then she spoke, her voice melodic like glass struck gently. "Salin, you came." Yeah," Adrian said, immediately aware she definitely wasn't speaking English. "I'm not sure what you just called me, but let's assume it wasn't an insult." She blinked slowly, confused but hopeful. When she tried to sit up, she winced, gripping her side. Blood, blue and almost iridescent, stained the cracks in her armor. He set aside the rifle and pulled open his med kit. "Okay, you're hurt. I can fix that, or at least not make it worse." She watched him carefully, studying each movement like she was memorizing him. Then she touched her chest, breathed a word, Lythara, and pointed weakly at herself. "Lythara," Adrian repeated. "I'm Adrian." She tried to mimic his name, the R rolling strangely in her accent. "Adet Ryan." It sounded better when she said it, warmer. He disinfected the burn wound on her ribs, and she barely flinched. "Most people scream," he muttered. "I guess your pain tolerance is." She lifted her hand, touched his wrist gently, and shook her head. A reassurance, as if he were the one afraid. Adrian's heartbeat did something stupid. Outside, another explosion shook the building. Dust drifted down like snow. Lythara's expression tightened. She raised a trembling hand toward the ceiling, traced a symbol in the air, a spiral crossed by a vertical line. Then she spoke 2 words he didn't need a translator for. "They're coming." Adrian checked his scanner. Multiple signatures approaching fast, enemy soldiers. Human tech wouldn't hold against them, not with the outpost half destroyed. He turned back to her. "Can you walk?" She hesitated, then nodded once, pride flickering behind the pain. "Good," he said, lifting her carefully. She gasped at the movement but didn't pull away. Her arms looped around his shoulders with surprising trust. "We're leaving before your friends out there arrive and ask awkward questions like, 'Why is a human carrying our princess?'" She froze, actually froze. Adrian blinked. "Wait, you're not, are you?" Her ears lifted, a reflexive, involuntary reveal of truth. Even injured, even exhausted, she radiated authority born, not earned. "Oh, perfect," Adrian groaned. "I found royalty in a collapsing outpost. On a planet currently being bombed. My guidance counselor would be thrilled." But Lythara leaned closer, her forehead touching his for a quiet heartbeat. Not romantic, more like a vow between strangers who suddenly had no one else. Her whisper trembled. "Adrian, do not let them take me." His arms tightened around her before he could think. "They won't." Outside, enemy troops closed in, shadows moving through dust and smoke. Inside, Adrian Vale stood with a wounded alien princess who seemed far too beautiful, far too powerful, and far too important for a man whose greatest accomplishment last week was unclogging a filtration pipe. And yet, he felt her trust. He felt the weight of what that meant. He felt the danger closing like a tightening fist. He adjusted his grip on her and took a steady breath. "All right, Your Majesty. Let's run before your problems become my obituary." She didn't understand the word. Adrian had carried wounded soldiers before, but never someone who fit against him as if gravity itself preferred her closer. Lythara was lighter than he expected. Strong bones, low mass, different physiology. But every step he took sent a soft breath past his neck, reminding him painfully that she was very real and very breakable. The corridor lights flickered as another explosion rattled the outpost. Dust rained down in warm, gritty sheets. Somewhere beyond the walls, metallic footsteps clattered, organized, disciplined, closing in. They sweep in three-man units, Adrian whispered, shifting her weight so she could rest more comfortably against his shoulder. Standard perimeter sweep. If we're quiet, we can. Lythara pressed her fingers to her temple and whispered a word he didn't catch. A small bioluminescent flare pulsed briefly across the markings on her cheek. Something about it felt instinctive, cultural, sacred. Then she winced and the light vanished. "Save your energy," he murmured. "I'll get us out." She opened her eyes slightly, silver irises catching what little light remained, and gave the smallest nod. Trust again. The kind that made him feel 10 feet tall and 6 inches terrified. He reached the hangar junction and peeked around the corner. 2 soldiers in obsidian armor were stationed near the collapsed blast door, their rifles humming with charged plasma. Their helmets bore the insignia of the HFY Dominion. Notorious. Efficient and absolutely not the kind of people Adrian wanted to meet on a Tuesday. "Okay," he whispered. "Plan A, distraction. Plan B, run. Plan C, do something incredibly stupid and hope physics forgives us." Lythara stirred weakly. "Adair Ryan." "Yeah." She pointed toward the far end of the junction where a smashed conduit still emitted tiny arcs of energy. Her voice was soft, strained. "Pulse, disruptive, use it." He stared at her. "You're telling me to short out a Dominion scanning grid using a half-dead power conduit and my multi-tool." She blinked, unsure if he understood. He grinned. "Lythara, that's the most romantic suggestion anyone's ever made." She didn't laugh, too exhausted, but her lips curved by a fraction, enough to make his heart do that annoying tightness thing again. Adrian set her carefully against the wall, ignoring how cold her skin had become. He knelt beside the sparking conduit and pulled out his multi-tool. "Okay, sweetheart," he muttered to the fried wiring. "Don't kill me and I'll buy you a drink later." A few quick adjustments, some borrowed current, a risky bypass. A crackling surge exploded outward like a silent electrical bloom. The Dominion soldiers jerked, their helmets glitching as the local grid shorted. Their scanners blinked out. Adrian grabbed Lythara and moved, not a run, more like a controlled, desperate glide through debris and shadows. The short-out wouldn't last long. He needed the emergency lift. He reached the shaft entrance. Damaged. Half collapsed, perfect. "Hold on," he warned. She clutched the front of his uniform, eyes widening as he pried open the service hatch. The shaft dropped into darkness, no safety rails, no stable ladder. But there was still one working magline cable. "Adrian," she whispered, sensing his intent. "It's safe," he lied, then stepped off the edge. Gravity caught them, yanking them into a plunge of cold air and rushing darkness. Lythara gasped, soft, frightened. But Adrian wrapped an arm around her and hooked his other hand around the cable. His glove hissed with friction as they slid, slowing just enough to avoid dying violently. They hit the lower level with a jolt. Adrian stumbled, tightening his grip on her. "You okay?" he whispered. She swallowed, nodded, then whispered something that sounded very much like a heartfelt curse in her language. "Yeah, I feel the same." The emergency hangar was ahead, lights half dead, roof buckled but still functioning enough to hide in. Adrian carried her inside, ducking behind an overturned cargo pod. Her breathing had become uneven, too uneven. He eased her down gently. "You're losing blood." She touched his cheek, not weakly, not vaguely, but with a deliberate tenderness that froze him. "Adrian, listen." Her fingers trembled against his skin. The silver in her eyes shimmered with something beyond exhaustion, fear, sorrow, and a kind of apology that felt too personal. "My people," she whispered. "If they find us, if they find me, you must not let them take." A metallic hum cut her off. Adrian turned slowly. The hangar doors were opening. Silhouettes stepped through the smoke, sleek armor, long ears crowned with crystalline filaments, weapons held low but ready. Not Dominion soldiers, not scavengers, these were hers. Her people, but their leader's posture wasn't relief, it was thunder. Controlled, simmering, lethal thunder. He spoke sharply in her language, voice cracking like a blade. Lythara's ears drooped, a gesture Adrian had already learned meant fear. The alien soldiers fanned out with the synchronic precision of a species that trained for war long before humanity learned how to make fire. Their armor shimmered with the pale glow of bioluminescent circuitry, each movement silent, except for the faint crystalline chime from their elongated ear ornaments. Adrian kept perfectly still, hands raised slightly, not surrender, just universal, "Please don't vaporize me." Lythara tried to push herself upright, but the commander barked a sharp order. Two soldiers rushed forward, lifting her gently but firmly. The relief in their eyes warred with something harsher: reprimand, fear, reverence. Then the commander stepped toward Adrian. He was tall, too tall, ears long and arched like blades. His armor, a deeper silver than the others, marked him as someone important, someone dangerous. He studied Adrian with predatory calm. Then he spoke a single sentence in perfect English. "You touched our princess." Adrian blinked. "Yes. I also carried her, bandaged her, and kept her alive. You're welcome." A ripple of murmurs broke through the ranks: shock, outrage, disbelief. The commander's eyes narrowed. "Do not attempt humor, human. You do not grasp the weight of what you've done." "Try me," Adrian said, unable to stop the reflexive sarcasm. The commander stepped closer until Adrian could see the faint swirling patterns etched into his irises, like galaxies in miniature. "Among our people, contact made during mortal peril, while her life is entrusted to your hands, forms a bond, a sacred one." "Oh," Adrian said, "that sounds important." "It is binding." Adrian coughed. "Binding as in culturally significant, or binding as in marriage forms?" The commander didn't blink. "Binding as in destiny, as in law, as in claim." Adrian froze. Lythara, still weak, whispered urgently in her language. The commander's expression softened by a fraction, but his voice remained flint. "She says you did not know, that your intentions were honorable." "Good," Adrian said, "because I didn't exactly have time for a cultural seminar while the outpost was exploding." The commander's gaze hardened again. "Nevertheless, you carried the princess heir of the Velanthyr Dominion, you bled with her, you fled with her." His eyes flicked to the dried blue on Adrian's palms. "And she marked you." Adrian stared at his hands. "She what?" But before the commander could answer, Lythara reached toward Adrian, voice trembling. "Adrian, please." The soldiers holding her stepped aside, reluctantly, respectfully, allowing her to take a weak step forward. She reached him, swaying, and he instinctively caught her. A collective gasp echoed across the hangar. The commander nearly drew his blade, but Lythara steadied herself against Adrian's chest, one hand gripping his suit, her forehead almost touching his. The glow along her collarbone pulsed once, a soft heartbeat of light. "Adrian," she whispered, "listen." He swallowed. "I'm listening. In my people's law, the one who carries the heir through death's shadow becomes more than protector. They become—" She hesitated, her ears dipped in vulnerability. The commander finished for her. "Her destined consort." Adrian blinked. "I what consort, as in?" "Royal partner," the commander said flatly. "Bound in oath, duty, and lineage." Adrian's brain attempted a reboot. "We met yesterday." "The law does not measure time," the commander replied. "Only sacrifice." Lythara looked up at Adrian with eyes both apologetic and terrified. "I did not choose this, but I do not reject it." Something inside him went very, very still. He'd held her because she was dying. He'd run with her because it was right. He'd protected her because leaving her would have broken something inside him. But being told he was now essentially engaged to an alien princess, that was new. The commander lifted his chin. "The High Council awaits her return, as do the houses who will judge this bond." "That sounds ominous," Adrian muttered. "It is worse than ominous, it is political." Two soldiers stepped forward to escort Adrian, not aggressively, almost ceremonially. Lythara tightened her hold on his sleeve. "You will not be harmed, I swear it." "I appreciate that," Adrian said, "considering your people look like they can bench press a shuttle." Her lips curved faintly, a flicker of warmth through exhaustion. "Stay close to me." "As close as I'm legally allowed," he murmured. Her ears rose with surprise, maybe even amusement. The commander cleared his throat sharply. "Princess, the Dominion waits." They surrounded them with disciplined formation and moved toward a sleek transport craft whose hull shimmered like fluid glass. As they boarded, Adrian whispered, "Lythara, are they angry at you for being with me?" "Yes," she said softly, "and angry at me. Also, yes. Fantastic, great start." The transport lifted off, smooth as silence, slicing through the smoke-choked atmosphere. Below, the outpost vanished into darkness. Ahead, the stars opened like a waiting judgment. Lythara exhaled shakily and leaned against him, not from weakness, but from something heavier. "Adrian," she whispered, "I must tell you something before we reach the capital." He turned to her. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the dim cabin. "The council will not only question our bond, they may demand its proving." He blinked. "It's what?" She swallowed. "They will put us through the ancient rites. The trial of accord." That doesn't sound like couples therapy. It is not, she murmured. What happens if we fail? Her ears drooped. Her answer was a whisper. Then the bond is severed and the human who formed it is exiled. Exiled to where? She met his gaze with heartbreaking seriousness. To the void. Adrian stared at her. For the record, he said quietly, your culture has terrible relationship policies. Lythara's fingers brushed his, tentative, trembling, seeking an anchor. And yet, she whispered, I am glad it was you. The transport soared toward a massive... The Velanthyr capital world didn't look real. Adrian had seen holograms, pristine, idealized images, but none compared to the living radiance outside the transport window. Cities floated like constellations made solid, suspended above a planet wrapped in shimmering auroras. Spires of glass-soaked crystal spiraled toward the sky, refracting whole spectrums of colors. Rivers of light wove through atmospheric layers as if the planet itself breathed illumination. Beautiful, Adrian whispered. Lythara watched him instead of the view. I hoped you would think so. He didn't miss the nervous tremor in her voice. The transport landed on a circular platform that rose from the palace like a blooming petal. Waiting for them was a reception of silent armored guards, their weapons sheathed but their posture stiff with suspicion. And at the front stood a woman whose ears were longer than Lythara's. Older, sharper, regal, her gaze was a blade. Lythara stiffened beside him. High Matron Vale, she murmured. My aunt. Is she friendly? Adrian whispered. Lythara didn't answer. The High Matron stepped forward, cloak rippling with embedded luminescence. She did not look at Adrian at first, only at her niece. Princess Heir Lythara, Velanthyr said in a voice that struck like polished steel. You return wounded, dishonored, and accompanied by... Her eyes finally flicked toward Adrian. That. Adrian raised a hand awkwardly. High human, I have a name. You should not, she said coldly. Lythara stepped between them before Adrian could react. He saved my life. And in doing so, Velanthyr snapped, he exposed us to an outcome the Dominion is not prepared to accept. Adrian leaned slightly toward Lythara. Does she always talk in dramatic prophecy mode? Lythara's fingers brushed his cautiously, a quiet plea for patience. Velantyr's eyes narrowed. Your bond has already sullied the succession claims. Adrian blinked. We didn't bond intentionally. I didn't even know you had cultural rules about. The trial will decide whether ignorance excuses transgression. He sighed. Great. That sentence definitely isn't terrifying. Velanthyr turned sharply. Bring them. The council convenes immediately. They marched through crystalline halls that glowed with internal light. Alien nobles watched from balconies as Adrian passed, expressions ranging from fascination to horror. Their long ears, adorned with shimmering filaments and jewels, angled sharply whenever they whispered about him. He walks beside her as if they are equals. The law binds them, unnatural, unthinkable. What will the council do with him? What if he survives the trial? Adrian tried not to listen. No pressure, he muttered. Lythara's pace faltered slightly. Her wounds were healing slowly, but exhaustion tugged at her every step. Without thinking, Adrian moved his hand closer, close enough for her fingers to brush his. She took it, lightly, as if afraid to break. The guards stared in scandalized silence. Even Velanthyr halted for the briefest instant. But Lythara didn't let go. They entered a massive chamber carved from a single crystal so clear it looked like sculpted starlight. A circular council dais hovered above the floor, and 11 luminous figures stood upon it, elders whose ears were draped with ceremonial chains that chimed with authority. One of them spoke with a voice that resonated through the chamber. Princess Lythara, human, approach. Adrian whispered, please tell me your grandparents aren't on this council. Worse, she murmured, the founding lineages. Fantastic, no pressure at all. They stepped onto a platform that rose smoothly into the center of the council ring. The elders studied them with a mixture of awe and censure. An elder with fractal markings around her eyes spoke first. The bond formed under mortal peril is recognized, but it must be proven or dissolved. Another elder leaned forward. Human, do you understand the trial of accord? Adrian swallowed. Lythara mentioned it involves tests. 3, the elder corrected. Essence, will, and alignment fail any and the bond is void. And you are exiled to the void, Adrian finished. Yeah, that part came up. Lythara shifted closer to him. He did not choose this. I dragged him into... Silence, princess, an elder commanded. Her ears dropped instantly. The humiliation stung Adrian more than he expected. Hey, he said sharply. You don't get to talk to her like she's. The floor pulsed with warning light. Human, an elder said, your tongue lacks restraint. And your tone lacks respect, Adrian shot back. Gasps echoed across the chamber. Lythara stared at him, equal parts horrified and grateful. Velith hissed under her breath. He'll doom us both. But the elders leaned forward, fascinated, unexpected, intrigued, not the reaction Velith predicted. The fractal-marked elder finally spoke. Very well, let the trial begin, the first test, essence. The chamber darkened. The platform beneath them glowed with rising threads of light, swirling gently around their feet like spectral vines. Lythara grabbed Adrian's hand. This one is not dangerous, she whispered. It merely reveals truth. Reveals what truth? Before she could answer, the vines of light coiled around them both, cool, weightless, a strange sensation like being submerged in memory. Images flickered in the air, Lythara gasping in pain at the outpost, Adrian carrying her through smoke, her forehead resting against his arms tightening protectively around her, her whisper, do not let them take me. Adrian winced. Whoa. That's personal. Lythara's cheeks flushed a soft silver. The trial sees only what matters. More images appeared, his panic, her fear, his determination, her trust. The room filled with their unspoken thoughts and fragile instincts. Then, an image neither expected. Lythara staring at him while he slept that first night, her expression soft, glowing with something ancient and vulnerable. Adrian felt his heart stop. You were watching me sleep. She looked away, mortified. I needed reassurance. The chamber dimmed until the crystalline walls vanished into shadow, leaving only the floating dais beneath Adrian and Lythara. Thin beams of light snapped into existence around them, 12 vertical pillars forming a cage of shifting radiance. The trial of will, the fractal-marked elder intoned, reveals not compatibility but conviction, the strength of one's spirit, the measure of resolve, no bond may hold without it. Adrian whispered out the side of his mouth. Any chance they mean emotional resolve and not, gladiator combat. Lythara's fingers tightened around his. The trial manifests differently for each pair. It shows what your will fears most. Oh good, Adrian muttered. Therapy but violent. A chime echoed through the darkness. Then the floor vanished. They dropped, not physically but through sensation, like falling through memory and nightmare all at once. A landscape formed beneath their feet, the scorched ruins of the outpost where they had met. Smoke curled upward. Shadows moved like hunting animals. Adrian spun. This isn't real. It feels real, Lythara whispered, her voice trembling. Do not let go of me. He pulled her close. Never. A low growl rolled across the broken terrain. Shapes emerged from the smoke, Dominion soldiers, but wrong, twisted, armor warped and grotesque. Their eyes glowed with hollow light. What are those? He whispered. They are not mine, Lythara said, horror creeping into her voice. This is the trial's fabrication, drawn from your fears. My fears, Adrian blinked. No offense, but these things look like rejected villains from a haunted carnival. One of the creatures jerked its head toward them and shrieked. Adrian flinched. Okay, slightly terrifying haunted carnival. The monstrosities advanced, their steps cracking the ground. Instinct told Adrian to run, but Lythara's body leaned into his, seeking protection, not escape. He steadied himself. They're not real, they can't hurt us. That is not true, she whispered. If your mind believes the wound, the body follows. Fantastic, Adrian muttered. So it's real enough. The creatures lunged. Adrian grabbed a fallen metal beam, trial-generated but solid in his hands, and swung wildly. The beam connected with one creature's head. It burst like shattering glass, dissolving into particles of light. See, he huffed. Totally manageable, kind of. Another creature charged at Lythara. Adrian shoved her behind him and lifted the beam again. But before he could strike, Lythara raised a trembling hand. A flash of silver blue pulsed outward from her palm, slamming the creature back with concussive force. Adrian stared. You have telekinesis. Limited, she gasped, wobbling. And draining. Adrian, this trial is pushing your fear into shape, but it is feeding on my weakness. I cannot sustain this long. Then stay behind me, he said. I've watched too many sci-fi movies to be taken out by glowing nightmare aliens. 3 more creatures lunged. Adrian fought, swinging the beam with raw adrenaline. Every impact shattered the creatures, but more appeared, more distorted, more aggressive. The trial was escalating. Lythara clutched his arm. It will not stop until your will breaks. Adrian paused, chest heaving. Okay, then maybe I need to figure out what exactly I'm afraid of. The answer came faster than expected. Not the monsters, not the trial, not even death. His fear was losing her. As that thought sharpened, the trial reacted. The ground trembled violently, and a rift tore open between them, crystal shards erupting into a glowing chasm. Lythara slipped as the ground split, falling to her knees. "Adrian!" she shouted, reaching for him. He lunged, grabbing her wrist just before she slid toward the void. The gap widened, pulling them apart. His boots scraped against fracturing stone. She gripped him desperately, silver eyes wide with terror. "Do not let go." Never, but the trial was not playing fair. The chasm widened further, yanking her away until only the tips of their fingers touched. Her voice broke. "Adrian, please." "Lythara, I'm not losing you. Not here, not anywhere." The air vibrated with the trial's will, the force trying to break them apart. Adrian felt his fingers slipping. So he did the one thing the trial did not expect. He jumped, straight into the widening void after her. Lythara's scream tore through the collapsing world. "Adrian." He caught her around the waist as they fell, pulling her against him. Wind roared around them as the fake world shattered into shards of memory and fear. Why would you jump?" she gasped. "Because I'm not afraid of falling," he said into her hair. "I'm afraid of falling without you." Light erupted around them in a blinding wave. The world dissolved. The two of them jolted back onto the council dais, still wrapped in each other's arms, Lythara trembling violently against his chest. The crystal pillars dimmed, their judgment complete. Silence filled the chamber. The fractal elder leaned forward, expression unreadable. "The trial of will is past with unprecedented resolve." Lythara buried her face for a moment in Adrian's shoulder, breath shaking. He tightened his hold on her gently. Veleth's jaw clenched so hard her ear ornaments rattled. He jumped into the void like a reckless fool. "Indeed," the elder said, "and in doing so he proved he possesses a will fierce enough to defy fear's shape." The dais brightened until the whole chamber dissolved into white. Adrian blinked against the glare, expecting another nightmare landscape or mutant monsters or some other trial-induced psychological torture. Instead, silence, soft light, a vast empty expanse stretching into forever. No walls, no sky, just an endless horizon of pale, shimmering nothing. Lythara stood beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her shoulder. She looked around slowly, her silver eyes uncertain. "This," she whispered, "is the trial of alignment, a place between thought and intention. It shows us not danger, but truth." "Truth," Adrian repeated, rubbing the back of his neck. "That somehow sounds scarier than the monsters." A gentle ripple passed beneath their feet, like the world inhaling. Then a figure formed in front of Adrian. It was him. Not physically. This version wore a pristine EDF uniform, medals gleaming, posture flawless. A version of him who belonged somewhere, who mattered, the perfect man he'd never been. Lythara's breath caught. "This is one possible path, a future you could have." The image of Adrian spoke, not with a mouth but directly into his thoughts. "You could return to Earth," it said calmly. "Be honored, be safe, be yourself again, no danger, no politics, no bond you never meant to form." Adrian flinched. "That's not true, I meant." He hesitated. Did he know what he meant? The perfect Adrian extended a hand. "You're not ready for her world, you don't belong in it, and she doesn't need you holding her back." The real Adrian clenched his jaw. "I'm not holding her back." Then the expanse rippled again. A second figure formed, this time Lythara, but younger, smaller, alone, standing before an enormous throne. Her ears drooping under the weight of a crown far too large for her, her eyes full of fear. Lythara stiffened at the sight, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the day they made me heir." The child Lythara looked straight at Adrian with eyes that shouldn't have known him, but somehow did. "I do not want this," the little version said, "but I must wear it for them." Another ripple, a third image, older Lythara, regal, radiant, but utterly alone on the throne, councils whispering around her, nobles bowing without warmth. A ruler isolated inside the palace of her own power. Adrian's chest tightened painfully. Lythara avoided his gaze. "This is my path if nothing changes." Then the world shifted once more, and a fourth vision appeared. Adrian and Lythara, standing side by side, not ruling, not bowing, just together, on a balcony beneath two moons, talking quietly, laughing softly. No throne, no duty, only choice. A future built on mutual will rather than obligation. Their hands were intertwined. Adrian's heart thudded. Hard, Lythara stared at the image as if afraid even to breathe. "This," she whispered, "is the path the trial wishes to know, whether we align toward the same horizon." whether our futures move together. Her voice trembled, or apart. The visions faded, the endless expanse hushed. Then two glowing sigils appeared, one before each of them. Lythara's was a spiral of silver light. Adrian's a pulse of warm gold. Lythara turned to him, eyes wide with fear she could no longer hide. This is the moment. We choose our direction. If we choose differently, the bond dissolves. And you get tossed into the void, Adrian finished softly. Right. She swallowed, stepping closer. I never wanted to endanger you, or force you, or ask you to live a life you did not choose. He met her gaze. Lythara, I didn't stay with you because of some law. I stayed because. His voice caught, because the idea of losing her made breathing hurt, because running from her felt like running from something true. Because fate wasn't the thing that bound them, choice was. He took her hands. She inhaled sharply at the contact, her ears lifting in raw hope. Look, Adrian said quietly, I don't know how to be a diplomat or a royal partner, or whatever this bond actually means, but I know what I want. He squeezed her hands, her glowing sigil brightened. I want the future where you're not alone, he said, where neither of us is. Lythara's eyes shone with liquid light. Adrian, he stepped closer, forehead nearly touching hers. So whatever this trial wants, whatever path it needs us to choose, I choose the one that leads to you. Her breath trembled against his. Then I choose the same. The expanse erupted. The sigils fused into a single brilliant light, neither silver nor gold, but something between them, merging into a radiant spiral that wrapped around their hands like living starlight. A chime rang, pure, resonant, final. The trial dissolved. They stood once again in the council chamber, this time still holding each other, still aligned. The elders leaned forward in awe. The trial is complete. The bond stands. The futures converge. Velanthyr looked as if someone had struck her, but even she could not deny the result. Lythara exhaled shakily, turning to Adrian with a look that held the universe and its fragile promises. You chose me, she whispered. He brushed a stray lock of silver hair from her face, voice soft. I think I started choosing you the moment I picked you up in that outpost. Her ears lifted in a gesture he finally understood deeply. Joy, pure and unguarded. The elders raised their staffs. The accord is sealed.